Reports are emerging that a rift is widening amid growing tension between Prince Harry and King Charles.
King Charles summoned the family to Windsor, but he wouldn't speak. Instead, he asked Princess Anne to deliver the words that would change everything. Meghan was absent, and Harry arrived alone, tension thick in the room as old wounds quietly resurfaced. Then Anne stood, calm but firm, and revealed the king's final wish. It wasn't the plan anyone expected. What followed wasn't just shock. It was emotional collapse. William froze, blindsided by the weight suddenly placed on his shoulders. Harry, already fractured from the family, felt the door closing for good. Voices rose. While the room reeled from the news, one thing became painfully clear. This wasn't the end of the conflict. It was the beginning of something far more explosive. But no one could have predicted what Princess Anne would reveal next. Princess Anne stood up, and in that moment, silence gripped the room. Even the harshest critics of the monarchy would have paused if they'd seen what followed. There was no royal fanfare, no ceremony, just a truth so raw that it cracked the polished walls of tradition. With the weight of her brother's legacy on her shoulders, Anne spoke not as a princess, but as the one person King Charles trusted most to deliver the one message that could fracture or fortify the royal family forever. What she revealed wasn't an announcement. It was a reckoning. King Charles, now weakened by illness but still deeply aware of the fragility of the crown, had made a choice, not one driven by favoritism or sentiment, but by survival. He'd seen the chaos the monarchy had weathered over decades, divorces, scandals, accusations, and knew the next move had to be one of vision, not comfort. So he turned to Anne, not William, not Camilla, not even a royal advisor. Anne. Because in a family that tiptoes around truth, she never flinched from it. Her words were deliberate but devastating. Charles's final wish wouldn't hand everything to William on a silver platter. That narrative of the future king inheriting everything was too easy, too expected. Instead, the king had mapped out a symbolic distribution of influence, roles, and responsibilities that looked beyond bloodlines and titles. William would, of course, inherit the throne. That was never in question. But Charles had chosen to acknowledge other dynamics, fractured relationships, public perception, historical echoes, and built a plan that might finally stop the cycle of destruction tearing the family apart. For Harry, the implications were staggering. The king's decision didn't erase him, but it didn't restore him either. It placed him in a space no royal had occupied before. Acknowledged, but out of reach. The inheritance wasn't about wealth. It was about positioning, about who gets remembered as the future, and who fades into footnotes. Anne made it clear that this wasn't done out of spite. It was done to keep the monarchy standing. And there, in that private room filled with centuries of legacy, Anne delivered her brother's verdict, not just on his sons, but on what he believed the monarchy needed to survive. Her blunt honesty, so often seen as severe, became the only tool sharp enough to cut through the tension. And as the shock settled, so did the dread. Because if Charles had made this kind of decision, one so carefully guarded and symbolically loaded, then it meant something even deeper was driving it. But behind the king's bold choice lies an even deeper story, one rooted in history and heartbreak. To understand the king's final wish, we have to go back to a time when royalty was built on unexpected turns. Because Charles's path to the throne wasn't one of inevitability. It was shaped by sacrifice, scandal, and silent duty. It all started with a single decision that rocked the monarchy nearly a century ago, when Edward VII abandoned the crown for love. No one knew it would set in motion a domino effect that would redefine royal destiny. His brother, George VI, reluctantly became king. And when he died young, a teenage girl never groomed for the throne was thrust into power. That girl was Elizabeth, and her reign would not only break records but set the tone for the next generation, including her eldest son, Charles. Charles grew up watching his mother carry the weight of a nation. But he also watched her isolation, her sacrifices, and the toll that duty took on her humanity. The idea of destiny wasn't romantic to him. It was rigid, cold, and unforgiving. And for decades, Charles played the waiting game. While the world changed, he remained in the wings, his every move scrutinized, his every word measured. His time never came, until it did. But by then, The world he was born into no longer existed. The monarchy was fractured, the family divided, and public trust hanging by a thread. When Queen Elizabeth II passed in 2022, the grief Charles felt wasn't just personal, it was generational. He hadn't just lost a mother. He'd lost the last symbol of royal stability. And in that vacuum, everything shifted. Barely had he taken the throne when his doctors delivered another blow, a cancer diagnosis. And suddenly, time, something Charles had once had too much of, became terrifyingly finite. He was no longer a prince with years ahead. He was a king running out of time. This collision of legacy and mortality forced Charles to see the throne not as a crown to be worn, but as a burden to be managed, wisely and fast. The weight of history bore down on him. He remembered the chaos that followed abdications, early deaths, and unprepared heirs. He had no intention of leaving that kind of mess behind. Every decision now had to protect not just William, but the very idea of the monarchy itself. And so Charles began making choices, not based on tradition, but on survival. Strategic, emotional, and deeply personal. His final wish wasn't designed to follow precedent. It was designed to break it, if it meant preserving the institution that had shaped and scarred his entire life. Because the king had lived long enough to see that the past wasn't a script to follow, it was a warning to rewrite. Now, as the clock ticks on King Charles's reign, the next chapter begins preparing behind closed doors while the world watches. Charles, another power quietly rises beside him. In the shadows of a monarch's final years, a new foundation is being laid, deliberate, silent, and unstoppable. William and Kate, once merely the hopeful faces of a modern royal romance, are now stepping into the most critical roles of their lives. Not through grand declarations but through the steady weight of responsibility passed down quietly behind palace doors. With every royal engagement, every diplomatic meeting, every public appearance, they're not just representing the crown, they're preparing to carry it. Long before Charles's health forced the conversation, the shift had already begun. Kate in particular was moving deeper into the core of royal life. Not because she was asked but because the monarchy demanded it. Even before the cancer diagnosis rocked the royal household, she had been gradually shouldering more duties, attending solo engagements, quietly leading projects, hosting international dignitaries, and always with a presence that echoed a queen in waiting. Unlike others who resisted royal expectations, Kate never flinched. She adapted, evolved, and won the admiration of both the public and the palace. Behind the scenes, Operation Menai Bridge, the codename for King Charles's succession plan, has long been in motion. It outlines every step the monarchy must take the moment Charles dies or abdicates. From notifying the Prime Minister to lowering flags and moving the King's body to Westminster Abbey, every detail is rehearsed like choreography. But what isn't practiced is the emotion, the weight of legacy falling on the shoulders of the next generation. And for William and Kate, that moment isn't some distant future anymore. It's approaching fast. What the public sees is polished. But beneath the surface, the sacrifices are enormous. Kate's world has shrunk in scope but expanded in significance. Her calendar revolves around royal duties, but her heart remains tethered to her children. She's had to strike a near impossible balance, being a mother, a wife, a public figure, and a queen in training. Yet she manages it with a calm that even Queen Elizabeth once praised. That composure is no longer just admirable, it's essential. Because when the inevitable happens and Charles is no longer king, the public will look to her just as much as to William. And William, though raised for the throne, has had to watch his father rule under the cloud of illness. It's forced him to prepare sooner, to lead more boldly, and to make decisions with a weight he never expected this early. He doesn't have the luxury of waiting decades like his father did. The monarchy needs continuity, strength, and relevance. And that pressure now rests on him. But as William prepares to lead, one brother watches from the outside, and he may not stay silent much longer. Prince Harry is thousands of miles away, but the king's final wish just pulled him back into the spotlight. 4 years, he tried to break free from the weight of the crown, trading palaces for privacy and titles for truth. But no matter how far he runs, the monarchy keeps pulling him back. Now, with King Charles's health in decline and the royal machine quietly shifting its gears, Harry finds himself caught between two identities, one he abandoned and one he can never fully escape. And as Charles's final decisions ripple through the family, all eyes are turning toward the Duke of Sussex, wondering if he's about to re-enter the storm or finally light it ablaze. His relationship with the royal family remains fractured beyond repair. Some say, though public statements speak of love and respect, the actions behind closed doors tell a darker story. He and Prince William haven't spoken meaningfully in years. The wounds from Meghan's entrance into the family, their dramatic departure, and the infamous Oprah interview never healed. And Spare, Harry's explosive memoir, made reconciliation even harder. But what few realize is that Harry didn't empty the vault with that first book. Sources close to him claim there's more, a second manuscript, more pages, more revelations, and they're waiting, just like he is, for the right moment. Now, as King Charles fights his own private battle and William prepares for the throne, whispers grow louder that Harry is watching and writing. Royal insiders believe another memoir is coming. This time, timed for after Charles's death. And unlike Spare, this one wouldn't be filtered through grief. It would be sharper, unrestrained, and possibly irreversible. But why wait? Why hold back now? Because some say Harry is still torn, still hoping deep down for a door to reopen. But what if that door no longer exists? Could Harry ever return to royal life under William's reign? That's the question echoing across the monarchy. Technically, he's still a prince, still a blood royal, but titles mean nothing when trust is gone. For William, Harry's actions crossed lines that can't be uncrossed. And as king, William would have the power to define exactly where Harry stands, or doesn't stand at all. Some believe there's a sliver of hope. That if Harry reached out, if the timing was right, the brothers could repair what's broken. But others warn it's too late. That each new interview, each public jab, each quiet slight only pushes Harry further out of the fold. And so the question looms, will Harry return, or will he burn the last bridge left? The answer might depend not on Harry's will, but on William's judgment. Because the next chapter of the monarchy is no longer shaped by Charles's compassion, it's being forged in William's shadow. And that shadow is about to move. But Harry's future might not be his to decide, because William is preparing a move that could end everything. The crown isn't just a title, it's power. And William may be ready to use it. For years, he played the dutiful heir, walking a tightrope of tradition and diplomacy while chaos swirled around the royal family. But the moment his father's grip on the throne weakens, everything changes. William isn't stepping into the role of a ceremonial figurehead. He's stepping into command. And insiders say he's already preparing his first decisive move, stripping Harry and Meghan of their HR titles for good. No more half in, half out. No more ambiguity. No more mercy. The wounds Harry left behind with his memoir Spare didn't just expose family secrets. They rewrote the public's perception of the monarchy. For William, those pages weren't just painful. They were personal attacks cloaked in sentiment. The betrayal cut deeper than the media ever saw. And while King Charles chose to absorb the blow in silence, William has no intention of doing the same. He sees Harry's actions not as misguided choices but as open warfare against the institution that raised them both, and he's done waiting. Under current royal protocol, William has no legal power to revoke titles. But once the crown is his, all that changes. As king, he can reassign, redefine, or remove titles entirely. And according to palace sources, he intends to do exactly that. Not for revenge, but for clarity. The public, the monarchy, and the Commonwealth deserve a clear line between working royals and private citizens cashing in on their former status. William wants to draw that line with permanent ink. The final straw, it seems, came when Meghan Markle reposted a message from Ukraine's vice president, one that referred to her as Your Royal Highness. Though the couple had agreed not to use those titles after stepping back, the reappearance of Her Royal Highness in a public message reopened old wounds and reignited debates within royal circles. Some saw it as harmless. William did not. To him, it was another example of how blurred lines keep damaging the monarchy's reputation. This isn't about pride anymore. It's about control. William knows that when he becomes king, His reign will be scrutinized from day one. And he doesn't want lingering distractions to pull focus from the institution's future. By making this move early, decisively, and publicly, he sends a clear message: loyalty matters. So does integrity. And there are consequences for walking away and then weaponizing your royal past. But even as William sharpens his strategy and braces for fallout, something else is shifting quietly behind palace walls. Because while the brothers drift apart, another woman rises with unstoppable momentum. She wasn't born royal, but now she may be the monarchy's only hope. In a family built on lineage, bloodlines, and centuries-old privilege, Catherine Middleton entered from the outside, quiet, composed, and underestimated. She carried no titles, no ancient heritage, no aristocratic legacy. Just grace, grit, and the one quality the monarchy has always feared yet desperately needed: authenticity. She didn't fight for the spotlight. She didn't demand reverence. She earned it moment by moment, through silence when it would have been easier to speak, and through dignity when the world was watching, waiting for her to crack. From the start, her path wasn't easy. While Queen Elizabeth saw something rare in Kate, a young woman with the steadiness of a sovereign, Camilla saw a threat. Kate was the outsider who became the favorite. The woman the public adored without effort, without scandal, without controversy. She didn't have to erase her past or reinvent herself. Her very ordinariness became her power. And within palace walls, that kind of quiet strength is far more dangerous than rebellion. When Meghan Markle accused Kate of making her cry during the now infamous Oprah interview, the palace braced for damage. But Kate said nothing. No interviews, no rebuttals, no drama, just silence. And that silence didn't make her look guilty. It made her untouchable. In a time when the monarchy was unraveling in public, Kate became its anchor. She reminded the nation what royal resilience looked like. Not loud, not performative, but immovable. The contrast between her and those who left became painfully clear, and her image only grew stronger. But Kate's power isn't just image. Behind the scenes, her influence has become undeniable. She's strategic, trusted, the kind of voice that advisors listen to when the cameras are gone. While others fell from grace, Kate rose by refusing to play the game. She's redefined what it means to be royal in a world that no longer reveres crowns by default. Her presence at King Charles's coronation wasn't just ceremonial. It was symbolic. The monarchy's future stood beside him, not behind. Now, as William prepares for the crown, Kate is no longer just the supportive wife. She's the emotional backbone of the institution. A mother of three, a public figure, and a woman who has endured global scrutiny with relentless grace. She's everything the monarchy needs to survive the next era, and everything it failed to be in the last. In every crisis, she's been the calm. In every scandal, the constant. Her influence doesn't come from position. It comes from poise. And that, more than any title, is what sets her apart. But even with Kate's strength, the kingdom may not survive the next storm if the brothers stay divided. King Charles's final wish wasn't about gold or titles. It was about legacy, and healing a broken crown. For a monarch whose reign began in the shadow of his mother's greatness, and whose final years are marked by illness and family rupture, Charles knew that wealth and power alone wouldn't define what he left behind. His true legacy would hinge on something more fragile, and far more complicated: unity. Not a grand reconciliation staged for headlines, but a subtle shift, a quiet invitation to restore something the monarchy had nearly lost: its soul. Behind closed doors, his message was clear. He didn't want Harry erased from royal history, but he didn't want him fully reinstated either. What Charles envisioned was balance, an acknowledgement that while Harry had wounded the institution, he remained part of its blood. That blood couldn't be denied, only managed. The wish was strategic, emotionally layered, and designed to prevent future war, not reward past rebellion. It was Charles's way of giving both of his sons a place without giving either all the power. And that's why he chose Anne, the one royal who had earned the respect of both camps. Her delivery wasn't meant to spark a reaction. It was meant to hold the message steady, and softened the blow with firm hands, hoping that her voice could deliver what Charles's frail presence could not: a chance for understanding, a final olive branch disguised as royal instruction. But even she knew that delivering the wish was the easy part. Whether it would be honored, that was something entirely different. Because reconciliation, no matter how carefully offered, depends on two people reaching across the same fire. And Harry and William still seem to live on opposite shores. The palace can prepare for coronations, issue carefully crafted statements, and orchestrate centuries-old rituals, but it cannot force peace. It cannot erase betrayal. And it cannot undo what's been written and broadcast to the world. Charles's wish may have opened the door, but it's William who must decide whether to walk through it. And that decision looms larger than ever. William's coronation is no longer a distant tradition. It's a defining moment, one that could mark the healing of a fractured royal family or confirm its permanent divide. Will he honor his father's final hope, or will he choose a stricter path, closing the gates that Harry walked away from years ago? Insiders whisper about contingency plans, strategic leaks, and final chances. But no one, not even those within the palace, truly knows what comes next. Because the king's final wish wasn't just a plea. It was a test of character, of loyalty, of future leadership. And now that test falls squarely on William's shoulders. One wrong step could rewrite everything Charles spent his life trying to protect. The monarchy stands at a crossroads. And the next move, it could change royal history forever. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.